There's good news for Florida State recruiting.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first show each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me, talk a little college football, and today, talk some recruiting. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Yes, today is about recruiting. Some good news for the Noles on multiple fronts. I've got a great backstory that I ran into. Not going to lie, that was pretty fun. Found that out earlier today. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. We're also going to talk about a couple of DBs. One I think is going to pick the Noles. One may not. Another, I don't think so, but I'm not positive. Bottom line, Florida State is in on a lot of DBs again. That shouldn't surprise anybody. But first, I want to give a little backstory, and this shows a little bit of history for Florida State, and it shows how consistency works. The Noles landed Kevin Wynn a while back. They beat out Texas. They beat out South Carolina, and they beat out the home state Georgia Bulldogs for this young man. Here's the key. Kevin's 320 pounds. He's a massive kid, plays 1A football in the state of Georgia. The town he's from is about 3,500 people, according to what I looked up on the internet. 1A football. But with that, I spoke to a coach at another school today about a prospect, ironically, that Florida State's had visit. His name's Caden Prothro. You'll be hearing that name a lot. Class of 26 player that's elite. Every school in the country has offered him. And we were just talking about how good Georgia high school football was, and he brought up Kevin Wynn. I had no idea he'd coached against him or anything else. This is a guy that's coached in state finals, et cetera, that really good football coach. And to put it mildly, when somebody gives you some information like that, you want to dig a little bit. And he said, Kevin Wynn's the best guy I went against. The coach, by the way, is Rich Finley at Bowdoin High School, just a little bit west of Atlanta. And he said, look, that kid's strong as can be. He plays hard as all get out. Every down he gets after it. And that's 320-pound guy. He's like, you don't see that every day. He says, it's the best defensive lineman I've ever coached against. Ever coached against. Now, I love his film, and he's a top 100 kid by everybody, but it puts it into perspective, the kind of players you're getting when an opposing coach who has no reason to bring up a kid goes out of his way to give props to a player. Now, he doesn't know that I run a Florida State podcast or anything else. Wasn't calling about Kevin, but that's a great sign for your future. Florida State D-line recruiting I thought was on the uptick. But after hearing that from Mr. Finley, that's news of the day to me, because you cannot teach size. Defensive tackle is arguably the most difficult spot to find guys that can play early because of the natural size. And he went out of his way, Coach Finley did, about the strength that Wynn has and the effort. When you put those two together with 320 pounds, that's a kid that can probably play early. So that's a really good start for me today. I ran into that again, potluck, but that was a great story. So the other bits of information, Conan Banny, the DB from Columbia, South Carolina. Let's get into him. Florida State was apparently the leader at one point. Most people think Tennessee is now. I don't know anything about him personally. I've never spoken to him, but that's kind of went back and forth. What has gone on this year, especially with receiver recruiting in Florida State, tells me you shouldn't count out the Noles, because all three kids that are committed, I didn't think they were going to get. Like especially C.J. Wiley, nobody picked Florida State for him. With that being stated, everybody's picking Tennessee, and I don't have any insights on it. Just wanted to report he's getting ready to make a decision pretty soon. Looks like that's going to be the Vols next. And I doubt this is any real shock, but Ben Hanks Jr., Ben Hanks Sr. obviously played at Florida. For those you don't know, mid-90s, really good linebacker, great player for the Gators. He's going to announce, I believe it's Friday, and I'm pretty sure that it's not going to go well for anybody not named Florida. Miami, Florida State, and a whole bunch of other schools are after him. I don't expect that to stop. Keep in mind, again, Florida season is already on the brink and it hasn't even started. It doesn't help that Montrell Johnson, their best running back, is banged up. But that is a curious situation. I think if he does commit to the Gators, that Florida State, Miami, and many other schools will still recruit Hanks. We'll see how that goes. But Florida, unfortunately for them, they're going to have that over their shoulder till they can figure it out. I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State's the one that knocks it out of the park at the end of the year, because they do go to Doak this year. That could be the last game for Napier. So we'll see how that goes. Right now, I'm hearing, barring something unforeseen, he's going to pick Florida. But again, this is recruiting, and that's a South Florida kid. So you never know. Speaking of South Florida, the other kid that I want to mention is Bryce Fitzgerald out of Columbus High School. The source on this is not one that I would normally use, but I've heard Florida, I've heard Miami, I've heard different schools at different times. Right now I'm hearing Florida State, and I'm hearing from multiple people. That's a kid from Columbus. That's the same high school that one Mario Cristobal went to, and his offensive line coach, Alex Mirabal, great guy. It's just ironic. I've also heard on and off how much Miami prioritized him, which shocks me because I think the kid's really good. He's got some length, got some height, plays hard, plays at a great high school program, one of the best in the Sunshine State. So I'm surprised that that's the case, but I'm hearing Knowles. But I would not discount Miami for two reasons. Number one, again, it's the alma mater of Mario Cristobal. It's 15, 20 minutes tops from Coral Gables. And the following point, Amari Wallace, a player that's committed to Miami at safety, had a bad lower body injury already, and he's out. That's a safety for Hurricanes. So in a lot of ways, they may not count him in their class. They may rethink what they're doing. Maybe they go after Fitzgerald again more. I don't know. Just want to broach that subject because anytime there's an injury to a key recruit you have and he's committed, especially since Amari plays at Central, they're not going to drop that kid. But at the same time, they got to fill their needs. So Miami may shift on that a little bit. I don't know. But that's something to think about. In terms of recruiting, as we get ready to go in the season, just a little barometer before I get to the 24 class here, you're not going to see a ton of news right now because it is the dead period. Kids get announced, but they're not allowed to go on visits. There is a caveat. The August 31st date for a lot of teams is their first game before Florida State's first weekend game at home. They're playing, I believe it's Monday night. But anyway, anybody that has an August 31st can host games. Florida State doesn't have one, so they're not going to have one that weekend. You'll see a lot of kids going to Miami, UF, UCF, wherever they are, first weekend, and that's the first day back out of it. So you're not going to hear a lot of recruiting news in general per se, but that's okay. Florida State, just like everybody else, they're doing fine, getting kids, and coaches probably needed a break just as much as the recruits did. Coming up next, I'm going to break down Florida State's incoming freshmen, the guys that are on campus, Cam Davis, all the different players with the Noles. That is next on Locked On Seminoles. Have you downloaded the Gametime app yet? If you want to get the best deals on the tickets, whether it's to a concert, a Major League Baseball game, checking out the Noles. Maybe you want to go down and see the Noles play Miami and Hard Rock. You can't get season tickets to Florida State game down there, so you got to find another route. Here's a great way to do it, and I'll give you two reasons why. Number one, inclusive pricing. This is a personal pet peeve. This is just my own take, but there's nothing worse that I hate on the internet. You click on something, it says $25 or whatever it may be. You go to checkout and you see 40. Why? Fees, taxes, other things. Hate it. I want to know the price up front. Number two, I'm not the most patient guy. If I'm going to spend money on tickets to a rock concert or anything else, I want to know where I'm going to be in conjunction to the main part of the event, the stage. If it's a soccer match, football game, Major League Baseball game, how far am I from the mound, home plate, etc. You get to see where you are in your seat to that venue right on your phone. So take the opportunity to download the Gametime app and take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets or anything else with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Next up here at Locked On Seminoles, I'm going to break down from top to bottom, quarterback through the kicker, how I think the freshmen will impact the roster this year, and a little bit about what they're going to do long-term as well. Again, I'm just putting them in the order of quarterback and then going running back, receiver, et cetera, all the way through. So let's have some fun with that. I actually think some of the guys are going to play against Georgia Tech. That's an important thing. You got to save reps if you're going to make a run in the playoffs. Some of these starters have to get reps off. The freshmen are part of that. So number one, Luke Kromenhoek, not going to play a ton this year. Maybe he ends up being the backup. We'll see. I'm curious about that. And I know a lot of other beat reporters for Florida State are too, but he's not going to be that guy just yet. It's a lot to take on to be the quarterback, but I have a lot of faith in him. I've known Luke since he was a sophomore. He's got a gun. He's the kind of guy that can zip it through the middle of a defense between 2-3 guys, time it up with the receiver coming around the backside of a safety, and catch it in the end zone. Smart kid, great competitor, big arm. Those things translate well to Norvell's offense and, quite frankly, about any other. This will not be his year, but Florida State has a very, very good quarterback coming up the ranks and a great guy too. He's going to help Florida State's locker room, and that's also important. The running back position has a kid that I like to watch about as much as any player in the class of 24, Florida State or otherwise, and that's Cam Davis. Seen him play at 7-on-7. I've seen him play at Under Armour. I've seen him play in live in games. Everywhere he's at, two things are guaranteed. He's going to put a hurting on you if you try to tackle him, and he plays hard at everything he does, even when he played defense in 7-on-7. That's why with his total effort and being 5'11", about 220 pounds, give or take, and hitting people like a Mack truck, he is a thumper. They're going to find a role for him this year. It may be because Rodell gets banged up for one game or has to come out even for a series, and they need a short yardage run. Whatever it is, they're going to find a way. Very good hands, too, before anybody asks. He could play in the slot. No problem. That's something Florida State has the receivers to kind of switch in and out with. That's the running backs, including the younger guys at the slot spot. It helps the rotation. Jalen Lucas, obviously, will be a guy doing that a lot this year, the transfer from Indiana. But Cam, even though he's totally different body type, I guarantee you he will be. When Florida State goes screen, the traditional way, by the way, this is going to be funny. The first time he gets a screen and has some space between himself and a DB, there's somebody going to be making a business decision. I'm telling you now. I can't stress it enough. He is a kid that will truck you. Doesn't care. Nicest kid you'd ever meet off the field. Not so much on it. The other running back, and it's so funny, this is one of those old sayings that's overused, but thunder and lightning. Mekhi Danzy's from Florida High in Tallahassee, and he's one of the fastest kids in the country. 45.99 in the 400 is smoking. He's a return man in the kicking game. He's a guy that can play receiver, he can play DB, and he's a running back. I don't know exactly how they're going to scheme it up, reverses, screens, whatever. He's a little different player than Cam, to say the least. Top end speed, Cam can really run, but I don't think he's as fast as Danzy. I'm curious to see if they give him carries just directly from running back only, but I think it's going to be a lot of different ways. Against Tech in particular, I mean, Cam's going to get in the lineup, I would imagine, the power that he has, and he's just a grown man. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think he'll play some. Danzy's a guy they might use completely different. He may not even play a rep at running back. They might put him at slot. They may use him as a motion man, and he definitely could be back on kick or punt return. It wouldn't shock me. If it's not Georgia Tech, one of those scenarios is going to play out this year. Too much speed to sit on the bench. Now let's move to the receiver position, and you got four good ones. Because he doesn't get enough respect, Camden Fryer is the guy I want to start with. He's a guy that ironically played with Kromenhoek in high school, and he's a kid that just has incredible ability to get open. He's got that natural feel, especially in the red zone. He was really, really good when I saw him in high school playing in the red zone at 7-on-7. It didn't matter if it was zone, if it was man, if it was a combo. He would figure it out, and he has the hands you would expect. Yes, his dad is the famous player that played on the 93 Florida State team. I would expect Fryer to be a guy that's quite honestly going to surprise some players on the roster when he gets there and gets through fall camp. It gets in the early part of the season. They see his consistency. They may have already gotten to this point. They're going to be impressed with it. One of the hardest working kids I've seen, and he is twitchy with those hands and everything, and he's put together. I don't think he's ready to play this year, but he could, and I think it's because of his strength too. Not many kids condition themselves the way he did. With all his discipline, the way he's been brought up, he's the kind of guy that you want in your program in general. He could probably play outside too. It's just he's been really good when I've seen him in the slot. So I think that's where he'll play. Speaking of, Wayne McCoy will probably play some in the slot and outside as well. Kid that played at Miami Central, super twitchy, deep threat. No doubt about it, guy that could have played about any program in the country, picks the Noles. And his speed is something that's important, but it's more important to note his twitchiness. Short space after the catch, kind of old school Bobby Bowden receiver. Not necessarily the biggest kid, 170, 180 pounds tops, but you can't tackle what you don't hit. Well, Wayne's a good guy to have on the field when it's 3rd and 5. Give him a swing pass. Good luck to the first guy. It's not like Cam will run over you, but this kid will make the guy miss so bad he may not make physical contact with Wayne at all. He has that kind of twitchy quickness, side to side, stop and start, and then he can go too. If you want him to run a fly route or a post, no problem. He can do that. The next two guys are a little different, but BJ Gibson, I think, is one most people don't know about. Someone spent a little more time with him. I think in some way, depending on how big he gets, he could play any of the 3 receiver spots, and he could be a DB too. He could be a safety for Florida State, maybe a nickel. Just a good football player. Another one of those county school kids in Georgia that Florida State is famous for getting. Love his upside, and I think he's a guy that's going to make a lot of headway for the Noles. Not sure if it'll be this year or not. He's been talked about by Mike and some other people in the program in fall, but it's still hard to break into the lineup. I think he can play the flanker or the slot. And if he gets big enough, he could play split end too. And that's where the last guy, and this is the one that turned heads this summer, coming in from the DC area, Elijah Moore. 6'4", kind of guy that can go up and get it. In the back of the end zone, has very, very good body control. Faces the football when he needs, timing his jumps, when he's spinning, when he's moving, when he's stopping and starting before, whatever it is he needs to do to adjust to the pass, he's very good at it. Down the road, definitely a red zone threat. And obviously, Florida State likes big receivers based on Johnny and Keon last year. But he's also a lot twitchier than most kids his size. Completely underrated, which is shocking because he's a DC kid. Per capita, it's one of the top areas in the country for placing players into the National Football League. Kind of an important stat. Elijah next year could be a guy that finds his way into the lineup at either flanker or split end. He'll obviously increase his role, know the playbook better. Curious to see if he plays much early on. They have openings at receiver for any of these guys, honestly. But you got to know the playbook and you got to be able to block. Elijah being bigger helps in the screen game for other guys, in the running game. That would be my best guess who would play early because he's just bigger. But it'll be interesting to see if one of them at least get some serious reps against Georgia Tech. You never know with Mike's offense. 2 tight ends. Amari Williams, the guy that enrolled an entire year early, very athletic. Saw him last year in a practice down there in Florida at the Benjamin School. I didn't know what position he was going to play, D end or tight end. There was a lot of debate about it, but he's had a couple of really nice moments that Norvell and other people, again, have talked about. Could he play some this year? Yes. Do I think he'll play right away at Georgia Tech? I mean, he should be a senior in high school this year. I'm going to say no, but he has impressed, and Mike brought him up. So if Norvell's bringing you up already, that's a good sign. The other kid is Landon Thomas, plays at Colquitt County, one of my all-time favorite high school programs. He's been a guy since he was a freshman in high school. Everybody knew about him, had all the offers early on. Florida State flips him from Georgia. He has the goods. This is a kid that has the NFL pedigree that you're looking for in terms of just the frame. Now, can he go out and play this year? Absolutely. Do I think he'll get reps against Georgia Tech? Yes, I do. That's a kid that might have as good a chance because Florida State's not necessarily super deep at tight end. They've got a couple guys that are a little underrated like West, but we'll see. But if they go some 2 tight end sets and they get a little bit comfortable pounding on Tech, who had terrible year last year with the run game that they tried to stop, they gave up 221. The Noles might just play 2 tight ends and rotate tight ends and kill them. Wouldn't shock me. Landon might play. O-line, you got 4 guys. Ty Hilton, Jaden Todd, I think, are both guys that are good players long term, but I think they need to redshirt. I don't think they got much chance to play in this game or really any of the ones early on. We'll see. They need a little more progress. If either one of these next 2 guys play this year, wouldn't shock me, but that also means there's been injuries because Florida State's deep. Manesse, Itate, I'm not even sure how you pronounce his last name, but the kid from California is an athlete, and he's massive. He is probably a guard for me early. ends up at tackle before his career is over for Florida State. I don't think many people will argue that you can't go wrong with big guys like him that have the feet that he does. So he'll have a multiple role at Florida State. Jonathan Daniels is a kid that played at Pine Forest, great program in Pensacola. I think that he'll play pretty early in his career after redshirt freshman year. But again, if either one of those kids play right away, I mean, somebody got hurt. So we'll figure that out here in a minute. Next up, we'll do the defensive side of all the players in the freshman class here in Locked On Seminoles. Defensively, Florida State had another nice class as well. We'll get to the DBs and all that are exciting. But the first player I want to mention is something kind of like I brought up at the beginning of the show with Kevin Wynn. If you want to get back into being a dominant top 5 program year in, year out, White, the kid they signed out of North Carolina, got to have guys like this. 6'3", 6'4", 320 pounds, maybe bigger. I don't know what he's going to come in at as far as shape, but we need to see what guys like this can do. And I know they're a little deeper at D tackle than we originally anticipated to get the transfer from Colorado State, et cetera. But there could be a situation where he plays some this year. I don't think any of the D linemen will play right away because they do have talent. There's no question. But they need at least one guy like this every year. This is a good sign for the future in general. Does he play or any of these kids? Probably not. But he's a pure nose guard. Adding him to win that's in this class, teams aren't going to run the ball very much on Florida State in the future. The run defense was okay last year, but it's about to get a lot better. D.D. Holmes, kid out of Gonzaga in D.C., great high school football program. Length, he's 6'5 plus, 250 coming out of high school. He's probably a lot bigger than that now. I'm curious to see if they play him at strong side, 3-tech, a combination. Is he a swing kid? I don't know yet. But this is the kind of kid that Florida State needs more of. They haven't signed enough kids like this that have the measurables on the edge that are the bigger guys. Obviously, Patrick Payton was similar height, but smaller, and he's grown into a pure edge rusher, which is great. Getting power guys like this that have his length, Holmes is exactly what the doctor ordered. Got to have guys like this in your program. I think he'll play some towards the middle, towards the end of the year. Hopefully they can still preserve a red shirt, but I like him a lot. Loved his high school film. Jamori Flagg, he's a kid from down in Miami, public school kid, really, really talented. I think he needs a year, but he's a little different kind of nose as compared to Denace White. He's a little shorter, fire plug, and he's a kid that's fire in general in terms of how he plays, but he's still 290, 300 pounds. Those guys are valuable too. You might be able to play him at 3-tech next to White and shoot gaps and do things like that. I think he redshirts, but this is the kind of kid Bowden used to take all the time. The two linebackers actually kind of mirror themselves. Let's start with Tamir Hickman Collins. That's a kid that is from a small town in South Carolina. This is the kind of kid Bowden would have recruited 100 times over. Go with what your eyes tell you, not with what the recruiting services say. Hickman Collins is a guy that had a lot of speed, could hit, could run, could play in coverage, but he played at like some small school, Indiantown, South Carolina, wherever that's at. Wasn't coveted as much as some others, but Florida State wanted him. So they went and took him. Ironically, Jaden Parrish, a kid from Atlantic High School down in Palm Beach County in Florida, pretty similar, a little bit bigger, but they had the same profile in one regard, no doubt. Thumper. I saw him play live last year. That kid is way underrated. Love Jaden Parrish. Yes, he can absolutely play for the Noles this year. Lock both of them to play special teams if they want them to. I hope they can both redshirt, but we'll see. Bottom line is you could have your Will and your Mike long-term right there with that pair. Florida State needed some good linebackers, and they got two good ones in this class. Finally here, as far as position players go, let's talk DB. Any of these guys can play multiple spots. Just say that out loud up front. Charles Lester, probably the most highly coveted of the group in terms of early rankings and all that. We knew about him going to his freshman year of high school. Really, really good. Ended up at Venice and just was a great player. Played receiver, played corner. We kind of knew before his junior year was up, it's probably going to be corner, 6'1.5" or so. Really long arms, can run like a deer. He's the prototypical corner that you see in the NFL. This is what you want on the hoof. And with Florida State's defensive staff and the way the defensive secondary has been playing, I have no doubt that he'll be really good. Jamari Howard. This one's interesting. There's more complexity here. Played at Norland, played at corner a little bit. They moved him to safety. He's done really well there. I don't know how Florida State's using him yet. Where Wester, I could see possibly playing this year. He's going to be corner. Excuse me. I'm not sure how Florida State's going to use Howard and if he'll play this year. He needed to gain some weight, but he can run and his arms are ridiculously long. When you have that much athleticism, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of play around. Maybe he's your nickel long term. Now, Florida State's loaded in secondary. But at the same time, I don't think that you're going to discount good players. If he earns playing time at any point this year, it wouldn't shock me. I just think that since he moved to safety part of the year for Norland, there's a chance that he'll move around this season. Maybe they put him on the scout team, but don't discount Jamari playing some this year. Of all the DBs, the next guy is the one that's most physically imposing and physically ready for the FBS level. Not that many freshmen are. Kai Bates is not just physically ready. He's a guy that literally is a 200-plus pound guy. And he stopped back by his high school the other day, actually. The coach there told me, he's definitely over 200 pounds. He looks phenomenal. Good sign. Coaching staff at Edgewater in Orlando is very, very good. And he also said, doesn't matter which position you play. I asked him about it because that's what I thought. I thought he could be nickel, free safety, or corner. Everybody agrees with me on that I've spoken to. Curious to see how they'd use it. Are they just going to give him one spot so that Kai is comfy and just goes at it? Or will Florida State staff, because this is a really smart kid, high academics, that they say, you know what, you can play multiple positions. Let's allow you to try this, but we're going to give you a little extra responsibility. Regardless, another kid that I think can play special teams, and if they have an injury or two, could play this year, but I don't think he'll redshirt. Very advanced kid mentally, and that's important. Ricky Knight's somebody that's gotten a lot of hype throughout summer, fall camp, what have you, and that's good news. Ricky is a very twitchy kid, another kid from down there in South Florida. I'm surprised he didn't get a little more recruiting ranking, but whatever. Doesn't matter. It matters what you do in Doak Campbell Stadium. I think that he will get a little bit of play this year, but probably redshirt. Not the biggest guy. Like Kai comes in, he looks the part. Looks like he's 20 years old. This kid doesn't have the same physical filled out frame. Kai's he's over 200 pounds. But Ricky's twitchy, and he's a natural corner. But Sertan and all those guys on the staff, they'll be fine. How they want to organize these kids, I don't know. Because they probably needed to get them through fall camp, let them get beat up a little bit, see what it's like to go through it, and then throw stuff at them. Because that's the reality of football. You're going to have to make adjustments on the fly. Can you do it? They didn't know until they started hitting, is my guess. Nothing wrong with that. Finally, Jake Weinberg, the kicker, again, out of South Florida. Florida State's kicker last year was 19-21. I mean, he's a Lou Gorza finalist kind of guy. This year, he's going to kick. Is Jake going to play a little bit this year? Possibly. Maybe a backup role or whatever. He's a good kicker, though. I did watch some of his film last year. He'll probably get a chance to play a little bit. But again, when your kicker returns and he's 19 out of 21 last year, well, what do we expect here? By the way, Mastromano is a great punter. He's been on every first team ballot that I have seen across college football, and congrats to him. I don't know if you're going to find a better punter. In Florida State, top 10 special teams last year. That looks like it's going to continue. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Appreciate you coming in to check out Locked On Seminoles. I really hope you come back again tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that notification bell, rate and review, share and comment on this podcast. After you're done, check out one of my buddies. Go check out all the things that got going on over there at Locked On College Football. It's a really good show with Spencer McLaughlin. It's great, man. Just go over there. NIL, you got ACC stuff with all the crazy grant rights, all that's going on. Locked On College Football is a great listen to. Everybody have a good one. Take care.